Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to do another episode on the basement renovation series. Last episode was the kind of concrete demolition, roughing for the plumbing and starting on the subfloor. So if you haven't watched that video, I'm going to link it down below. Check that out first. But this video, I'm going to go over the framing and starting our rough-ins, closing up the stairs, stuff like that. Last video I went over how we build our own subfloor using the DMX foundation wrap and then put 5/8 tongue and groove chew floor on top of that. The advantage of that, all our wall framing now sits on top of that subfloor, and since that subfloor is on the plastic, there is no wood touching any concrete. There'll be no moisture coming through. We make sure all our walls are sitting on top of our subfloor and also have a gap behind them in between the studs and the concrete walls, and that creates a air gap to help keep moisture down and away from the studs. Since our insulation was already in place, we just had to frame our walls in front of the insulation and the vapor barrier, so we didn't have to worry about dealing with any of that stuff. We just left it undisturbed. We end up using basic 2x4, 16 on center, basic construction for these walls. We did the bathroom bedroom common wall in 2x6 instead of 2x4. One, it's underneath the steel beam, and two, I'm gonna end up doing 2 HVAC heat runs down from the main trunk line to heat the bathroom and the bedroom. When we do basements, we like to put all our heat runs as close to the floor as possible because heat rises. We want to create that convection in the house system, so it's best if it's down below. A lot of guys will cut corners and go the cheap, easy route and just put vents up in the main stack on the ceiling and air will flow out of them. But we find it's way more comfortable to have the heat flowing down to the bottom. It'll keep that basement nice and comfortable. Once we have the bulk of our wall framing down, we can focus on the ceilings and the bulkheads. A great tip for framing out bulkheads, if you have to wrap around HVAC or plumbing or anything like that, if you have to do really long runs, this is a track for a steel stud. This is like a 2x2 steel stud, and your 2x framing will fit right in there. You can get these in really long lengths, like 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, whatever. And you could build sections like this and frame it with, because the metal is typically a lot straighter than the long 2x materials and 1x materials, you can get a nice straight run with these and still use mostly wooden framing, but if you use your top and bottom with steel, you'll keep your bulkheads nice and straight. You can of course use steel studs for everything, but we just prefer framing with wood and then using the steel track whenever we need a long straight run. For example, the main bulkhead in this almost runs all the way from the one end of the house all the way to the bathroom door, and we want that to be nice and straight. When you walk down the stairs and look down that hallway, we want that nice straight bulkhead. When we started this basement, there was just a basic railing on the wall side coming down. The homeowners wanted a kind of wall railing built, so we took the railing off the wall and built a angled wall that follows the stair line. And at the same time, we ended up closing up all the risers on the stair because this was just a basic pine construction stair, and we ended up closing in the risers. We glued and screwed a bunch of OSB risers on the back to help close up and strengthen these stairs. They are very loud and not secured very well, so because those will be capped towards the end of the project. Once the majority of our walls were up and the stairs are starting to get closed up, we started framing in the ceiling. Typically, if the ceiling joists are in good shape and they're nice and level with each other and nice and straight, we could just put drywall right to the joist above. 80% of the times it does not work out. So what we do is we end up putting 2x material flat underneath the joist. And the reason we do this is, one, most ceilings aren't perfectly flat, and two, a lot of these builds with unfinished basements, they run a lot of their electrical and plumbing lines just flat on the bottom of the joists, and they're all just stapled up there. So instead of moving all that stuff around and messing with all that, you put flat 2x4s in between them, and you can level out and shim as you go along, and you can make a nice flat ceiling that covers up that only ends up dropping your ceiling by 1.5 inches, and you don't have to mess with all the plumbing and electrical that people already did. Typical builder, easy way route, run the plumbing on the bottom instead of running it through. We'll run a 2x4 flat, and we'll put a few nails with a framing nailer in it, and you're able to pry and shim wherever it's needed to be, and you can run levels across it with a laser or whatever, and you can check between the 2x4s to make sure you have a nice flat ceiling. Just like I said about the bulkheads, nothing's worse than looking at a wall or a ceiling that's like 15-20 feet long and it's got like a wave in it Nobody wants that. Even with flat ceiling paint, it doesn't look good. We try our best to make it nice and flat with these 2x4s because we have control. If you're dealing with the ceiling joist, you're at the mercy of the ceiling joist, but when you add your own ceiling and you can shim as you go, you can make it perfect. Now that the framing's mostly done, I started the HVAC runs. We roughed in I ran the line out to the exterior of the building from the ceiling fan in the bathroom that we're going to put in. And I also put a few openings in the main trunk from the furnace. I started dropping my heat runs from the main trunk down the center into the bathroom, the bedroom, and 2 in the main living area. Now it's time for rough-in. We started roughing in the laundry room plumbing. We ended up with one of those Oatey supplies for the laundry room. It comes in a white box. You mount it into the studs, and it's got your shut-off valves already, and it's got the spot for the drain to go in, and it's nice and recessed into the wall, and it comes with a nice trim plate. Highly recommend using those. They have the same style Oatey branded box for the water supply for the refrigerators now. So instead of just having a line that sticks out of the floor, like typical, you pull your fridge out and you just see the coiled up line on the floor, they actually sell a recessed box that sits in there with its own shut off and a hammer resistor in it. They sell them on Amazon, whatever. If I find them, I'll link them down below. This is typically the part where we'd also run all our wires for our pot lights, and we just end up leaving loops in the ceiling and marking on the subfloor with X's and circles just to reference later where our pot lights are going to be. We like to use the slim pot lights, the LEDs. You can get them in different brightnesses and different warmths, 3000K, 4000K, 5000K, whatever. The slim ones, they're about as thick as a sheet of drywall and they spring into place. We don't mount the boxes. We don't typically mount the boxes right away on the framing. We run our wires in loops wherever there's going to be a pot light. We mark a spot on the floor with a Plum Bob or a laser level, and then when all the wires are hidden underneath the drywall, we can come back and reference the mark we have on the floor. We have a 4-inch hole saw, and we drill the holes where the pot light's going to be. Reach in and pull the wire down and wire it from underneath. Makes life so much better for drywalling, mudding, because you don't have to cut the circles ahead of time. You can just do all your drywall, mud, tape, whatever, mark your holes, drill them, pull the wire through, you're done. If you don't own a Plum Bob or know what a Plum Bob is, it's just basically a weight object that hangs on the end of the string, and you can hang it from the ceiling. It'll point directly to something underneath it. If you don't have one, you could always use chalk line. Let's say, for example, there's a pot light going right around here, and right around where it lands underneath me once it stops moving will be directly below where I want my pot light. I could use this reference to mark a spot on my subfloor and come back to it later after the drywall's up. Do the same thing, hold the Plum Bob on my mark, go up, and have the spot for my pot light. Like I said, typically we would run all our wires and stuff like that, but for this particular job, we are not responsible for the electrical. A third-party company is coming in to do that. It's all subbed out, so we'll see how they do things. Well, framing's up, stairs are closed in, a lot of our plumbing's ran. Now we're waiting on electricians to come in, get their inspections, do what they gotta do. We're gonna go on to another site for now. If you're new to this channel, welcome. If you're not new to this channel, thanks for sticking around. Leave a comment, ask any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. If you stuck around this long, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for hanging out with me today.